I think it's fair to say no one really knows what Ferrari are going to look like this year. While the car is 99% changed from last year, with notable differences in how it looks, despite some early testing between the two drivers, there is not a lot to go on, and even then it's quite unreliable. Of course, the Ferrari camp themselves are bigging up the car and believe they have one that can win the title, which is usually to be expected by that camp. They are very confident every year. But the only big question marks aren't around the car, they're also around the new driver lineup between Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. Now, Charles Leclerc has his own questions. We spoke about how he can definitely win the title if the car is good enough this year, because he will be against a teammate like Lewis Hamilton, who he have way more experience within a car and expect to win, and probably is a better driver than Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri with more experience. So if he is competing with the McLarens, will always have an opportunity. However, we know Ferrari cannot always do the right decision. But the biggest question mark I think around the entire team is the inclusion of Lewis Hamilton. Now, when Lewis Hamilton joined Ferrari, it was a massive shock news across the world. Not only did it surprise most F1 fans, I would say, even with them dodgy rolling contracts he didn't like at Mercedes, it transcended the sport. People who never watched Formula 1 knew who Lewis Hamilton was and couldn't believe he was going to Ferrari, a brand that you've never really represented with him, and it's almost like a Luka Doncic trade to LA Lakers. Now, it got announced so long ago that it actually feels so weird that it's finally now happening. Lewis Hamilton will have his first drive in Ferrari in a couple of weeks' time, and it's got to be a very exciting time for him as well. Lewis Hamilton has mentioned he feels invigorated and he has a new lease on life where he believes he can do his best, and he is noted to be happy with the changes Ferrari have done to accommodate him in the car already in the testing early on. So it does seem like the relationship is working well for right now. Now, for Hamilton, this is going to be the weirdest step in his career. When he was young and at McLaren, he obviously moved to Mercedes, in which was a ballsy move at the time, but obviously paid dividends, and he's making another one where it makes sense given where Ferrari are right now and Mercedes, and he wants short-term success given his age. Now, the thing is, at Mercedes, everything was always given to him. As much as they didn't give him the best contracts, they gave him definitely the best car and the most care up until last year. He was the main guy, the main person that brought sponsorships in, and ultimately the face of Formula 1 other than probably Max Verstappen. Now, not only is Ferrari a bigger brand and almost universal with how good they are in racing, he is joining a team that haven't won a Constructors Championship in around 17 years and a drivers in 18, although I don't expect him to win the drivers. The expectation to perform early is going to be there, and even though he is going to be that second fiddle, you have to think to Charles Leclerc at some points in the season because he's probably more consistent. Lewis Hamilton is an incredible driver, and with that sort of aura and expectation around him, the fans will definitely be expecting him to perform early on. This is why the question, is Lewis Hamilton going to be good at Ferrari, a very interesting one. Not only are the circumstances good, it looks like they are really helping him, but he is going to be, I think, significantly slower than Leclerc throughout the season. It will definitely be a weird thing for him to swallow. In his entire career, he's only been behind his teammate driver on points twice. Once was Jenson Button over 13 years ago, and once was last year to George Russell, who they were both on the same points going into that Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, in which George came third and Lewis came ninth, which ended up making George go ahead. But you could argue without this dodgy disqualification at Spa, then it would be a lot more comfortable. So it is going to be interesting to see how much Leclerc does beat him. I think that is the expectation. Leclerc should be going for a world title this year with the competition of McLaren and Hamilton really being his main targets, who he should be better driver than all of them if you think about it. But there's definitely going to get to some certain moments where Ferrari maybe do consider Hamilton as that guy. I've seen people speak about it, but obviously the money is a big thing. Hamilton is no joke, and he will perform if given the right car. So maybe you might give him some extra things to catch up to Leclerc, which Leclerc may not like. It kind of depends the situation Ferrari are in. And I think that's how this season is going to go overall. Ferrari have said that they will look to give more upgrades into this year as it goes on if they are doing really well or need to have that little upgrade to really solidify a drivers or constructors championship. And if not, they will just continue their development on that 2026 car, which we expect. But I think in comparison to a lot of teams like Aston Martin and Red Bull and Mercedes, who we know are definitely pushing for that 2026 spot, and McLaren, who are definitely trying to get the best car for this year, Ferrari are somewhere in the middle. They might have a good car that can compete this year and probably come second yet again in the constructors, but they could definitely win with the drivers that they have over McLaren if you think about it. And next year might be a harder competitive season, which obviously they have to improve from. Ferrari won't want to be the 4th or 5th best team on the grid, but it's definitely going to be an interesting dynamic to see if they can get there and take that promise as well, and sort of see if they make the right decision throughout the season. Now back to Lewis Hamilton, there's definitely some things that I think going around him that you have to look at. He is definitely not the driver that he was a few years ago. He even admitted it in recent interviews, and even this new lease of life at Ferrari might not be enough to find that. His qualifying time last year was specifically very poor throughout that end of the year, and in the end I know George Russell maybe got a little bit more favouritism throughout the season. He probably had a better drive than Lewis Hamilton quite cleanly, so Lewis Hamilton, we want to make sure that he can at least keep up to Charles Leclerc and give Ferrari that constructors if they're both performing well, because let's not forget Carlos Sainz last year was relatively good for Ferrari and has been for the last couple of years, so look, Lewis Hamilton has a lot of points to regain that they might have lost. Now from a car perspective, it's definitely going to be harder for him to sort of get to grips with it, especially at the start, but he is still one of the most experienced drivers on the grid, one of the best drivers on the grid, and usually when some people go to Ferrari, the occasion, the team of how big it is could be too much of them, which you won't get with Hamilton because he's been here before, which I think is a good reason why he's gone there. Now personally, I don't know if Lewis Hamilton's going to be amazing at Ferrari this year, but I think you're looking more into the future. Realistically, this season it's going to be all about Charles Leclerc for them, you have to think, but obviously money does talk and Hamilton's name does talk, so maybe that would shift them and sway their opinion throughout the season. It also depends completely on the car and if it's competable, but I do think it will be, and I think Lewis Hamilton will easily come in that top 6 Drivers' Championship, and we can see maybe even potentially more. I think he will surprise a lot of people. Let me know in the comments though where you think Lewis Hamilton will come, and what do you think he would achieve this season? Do you see him getting multiple wins? Do you see him not winning at all? Because I definitely think it's one of the biggest questions going into the season. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.